think we're recording. Okay, so let's kind of go over what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be looking at the CSS building blocks. We're going to be constructing style rules, adding comments, um, the cascade. This is where styles can conflict with each other, and what the property values are, property value within a style sheet. So this is taken directly out of your book. A style rule is made up of a selector, which indicates that what will be formatted, and the declaration block, which describes the formatting that should be executed. Each declaration within a block is a property value pair, separated by a colon and ending with a semicolon. It has a left curly brace and a right curly brace, and that defines the style for whatever the selector is. Okay. You guys have an idea of other possible selectors? Can you give me an example? Paragraph or P? What else? Body? Yeah. Any other type of selector that isn't just an HTML tag? What's that? That can be a selector, but I think it's still an HTML tag. Oh, okay. Okay. How about the ID tag, the ID attribute? Okay, that can be a selector. And what do you preface the ID attribute with? It'll be prefaced with the hashtag, right? What about the class selector? What do you preface the class selector with? The dot, right? Okay, so here's an example of a selector. We have the H1, which maps to the HTML tag. Any HTML tag can be a valid selector. Okay, so even the root, which is HTML itself, if you make HTML, it'll apply the style to everything on that page within the HTML style tag. Inside of it, we have the declaration block, which is wrapped by two curly brackets. This is always very important. Make sure that if your style is going to be multiple lines, that you match your curly brackets, the opening and the close. For me, you're going to find it's always a good idea to use spacing and indenting to show where things are at. Now, you can also have your declaration block, the opening and closing curly brackets on the same line. That's valid as well. In fact, if you're trying to be succinct with your style sheets and you can fit everything on one line, you'll find that some style sheets actually do that. Okay, then you get to the property value. You always start with the property. These are valid CSS properties that coordinate with whatever the value is going to be. And if you ever have problems finding these, you can go to W3 Schools. You can go to the Mozilla Firefox site. They have a whole set of documentation there for CSS. The web is replete with lots and lots of examples. Stephen? Leonardo. Okay. Stephen. All right. Let me get you guys the code so you can go ahead and sign in again real quick. If you could, the code is up there on the board. Go ahead and sign in with the code. If you want to write it down, it's 2 Foxtrot November Whiskey Oscar Bravo. 2 Foxtrot November Whiskey Oscar Bravo. Okay. Stephen, you got it? Okay. Awesome. All right. So we're here looking at the style rule. So let's talk about selectors. So a selector could be a tag name like H1. You can see it points to a certain type of tag. It can be a root like HTML, It could be a class name. For example, I have an example class name here of my container. You can see an example of the HTML that it references. Actually, my dot there inside of my class and the attribute is wrong. So let me see if I can fix that real quick, because you guys are going to have this for later. There we go. And then you can have IDs like hashtag student ID. So it'd be the input tag, the ID, student ID, or it could be an attribute name like input bracket and then the attribute itself, the name of the attribute that you want to reference. This is also a valid way of setting up selectors. So for example, say you have a form on your page and people are going to be filling it out and there is an error that occurs. You could specify a certain style that feeds back and says make the input of student ID show up in red because they didn't put the right information. Has anyone ever ran into that validation on forms? They use a lot of CSS to give the validation. All right, so those are some example of selectors. Any valid HTML tag can be a selector, as well as the attributes on that tag. Okay. Property values. So you have the selector, you have the curly bracket, and then you have the property value. You could have, for example, for font family will take a comma delimited list of values. Can anyone tell me why you would want to have font family Tahoma, Verdana, Helvetica, Arial? Why would I do that? That's exactly right. Some, if you're on a Mac, the way it used to be was if you're on a Mac, Helvetica was the only valid font that you could use, and it was similar enough to Tahoma or Verdana, which was only on Windows boxes. And so you would specify a font family and similar fonts so that no matter what device you were on, those fonts would work. And then you have font sizes. There's a lot of other value types you could put here for the font size. You could put EM values. You could put percentage values. There's many different values you could put here. For the color, here I'm using plain text. There is a set of available plain text colors that you can use, as well as RGB examples. Can anyone tell me how RGB is broken out? Or what does it stand for? There you go. You guys are good. All right. But it's always followed with the hashtag on the RGB. Excuse me, it's preceded by the hashtag. Okay. Comments. Why would I put a comment on my CSS? Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes if I have, for example, here it's HTML, so I know this applies to everything, right? But sometimes maybe it is a class name, and maybe you're working with another developer and they were not on their game and they put a class name that made no sense, right? And so you had to come back behind and put a comment and say, after digging through the code, I found out that this class name is actually referring to this, right? It's reasons why you would put your comments in there. Notice you can also put comments on the same level as a property value, right? However, you cannot break up a property value with a comment. That's bad juju. Don't do that. Okay, you can put the comment after it as long as it's after the semicolon, right? You cannot nest comments. For example, here I have a comment and then I have a comment inside of a comment. This will break your CSS and you'll find your styles not working. In fact, it'll read everything up through the first complete block. So this block here, depending on the browser, it wouldn't read because it can't get to the closing block. But everything before this, it would probably read and interpret. Okay, so don't try to nest your comments. Make sure that you put your comment starts with a slash, asterisk, and the closing comment is asterisk slash. Don't put the asterisk on the other side. That won't work either. Okay, so now we get into inheritance. Can someone tell me why I would have an HTML selector and put styles on that HTML selector? I know you guys are going to get this. You're going to go, aha, this makes it easy. That's why I would do that. Let's say that you guys are looking at your ugly websites, and some of you found some really creative, ugly websites. I think Lynn's Cars was the most interesting I've ever seen. Um, let's think about a different one, though. Let's think about the local public lands website. Who was the one who posted that one? Okay, so you posted, what was the thing that you noticed the most about that site? Yeah, yeah. Specifically, though, the different types of fonts being used. If you want uniformity on your site, it's a good idea to put in your HTML tag the type of font you want to be used across that entire page. So if I specify the font to be used for the page inside the HTML tag, that guarantees that the body tag and any other tags that are nested within the body tag will always use that particular font style. Does that make sense? So if I want all of my page to use HTML, to use Tahoma, then it's a good idea just to put it one time. And it makes it easy too, because then if I decide I want to change out the font style for the site, I just go right to the HTML selector and I change it for that tag, right? So inheritance is important. They're the attributes you pick up from your parents, right? Has anyone ever told you, oh, you got your mom's nose or you got your dad's eyes, right? It's inheritance. You're picking up attributes from your parents. It's the same way with coding. And this is an important lesson to learn, especially if you guys get into object-oriented design. Inheritance is a big concept there. It makes life easier because you know that certain attributes you don't have to keep coding the same thing over and over and over again. You can set it one time and then walk away from it. And it also makes it easier to change. All right, so let's look at this sample here. What inside of here is guaranteed to be expressed across that entire page? Exactly, the font family. Because all of these other elements are nested by default inside of the body, right? So within your HTML, that style of font family will always be across the entire page because body is a root style. It doesn't make sense to put a style tag on a header or a head tag, does it? Because a head tag isn't displayed on the page. It's used to point what will be displayed on the page, right? All right, so your div tag, your paragraph tag, and your image tag. Now, another interesting thing I want you to catch here is the idea of precedence. If, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Let's go to the next one because I think the next slide is a look at some sample HTML. There we go. Right. Okay. So here's some sample HTML. You'll have to pay attention to the nesting that occurs here. We have a P tag, and inside of the paragraph tags, we have a nested element textual element of P, and this is inside of a code tag, right? Then we have, after the end of the paragraph, we have a new paragraph, but this one has a style class on it called example. And inside of it, there's another code with a P, right? And then again for class, and then again for code for example. And what the code tags do, they actually change the style if you watch them on a page. I believe it makes it look a little italicized or something. All right, go down to the next one. Now we have a P class, and inside of this P class, inside of the quotes, we have example space example2. What do you think happens here? If the selector is dot example and there's the curly brackets, and inside that curly brackets, it says it's going to make it a certain color. And then we have another class attribute. It has references the class example, but it's also referencing another class called example-2. What happens here is that the second P class will pick up some of the styles of the example that we see there, and then whatever else is in here, it's also going to pick it up and apply it. And so you could have, and this is very typical, you could have a class that's designed to do a certain thing. It makes it modular. You can apply it to a class attribute in HTML. And then you could have another CSS style class that specifies something else that's modular, that only does certain things. And you can have those lined up, space delimited within that class attribute within the HTML tag. Okay. All right. So this gets to specificity. The law of specificity states that the more specific the selector, the stronger the rule. And the conflicting style and the stronger rule wins. So, for example, if I have a rule that says all of my classes are going to be red, the text will be red, but I have an ID also on a paragraph tag, and that paragraph tag says something different, that ID will always win over the class. So ID selectors are considered the most specific because they point to the exact element that you want to address. Okay. I can't speak. Specificity. So the highest level is ID. The next one is order. That means that the level of the styles, and then the importance tag. Now this may seem kind of backwards to you, but here we have exclamation important semicolon. All right. If you put that on a style, you're ensuring 100% that that style is going to take preference over anything else. And you really don't want to use that unless you're trying to test things. And I'll show you in the Chrome browser how we can do some testing and test out styles and put the important tag to force color changes. There may be some rules sometimes where you have to do it, but on the whole, you really don't want to use the exclamation important unless there is no possible way. But generally there is. Okay. All right. So let's go to some live code examples. You guys going to open up a text editor? I'm going to bring up the Atom browser, IDE thingy. Oh, wrong one. Okay. Let's see here. All right, so here is a site we had open last week, right? This was our, I think this is it. Give me a second here while I try to find this. You're gonna be like that, aren't you? Okay. Okay. All right, so we're gonna first do this by, let's see. Also just open this. Okay, so this was a site we had with some images, right? Okay, so let's take out the images and Latin fake text for HTML. Come on. There it is. Okay. What I just copied and pasted up here, sometimes you'll see on some websites they use this this fake language. It's called lorem ipsum dollar sit amet. It's a set type text used because it simulates the layout of the English language, but it means absolutely nothing. It's just gibberish. Okay. And that's what I'm using here. You can actually go out to sites that generate it for you. It's for typesetting and demoing the layout of a site. That's all this is for. All right. So I've got the site here. Let's add some okay. So we have our site. It's very basic, right? So let's add some styles to it. The first thing I want to do, um, typically um, you can do your CSS styles in on the page, and the way you do that is use the style tag. Whatever you use inside the style tag, though, does not mean it's going to transfer to all other pages. So in the long run, you want to make sure you put your CSS classes, your styles, in a separate cascading style sheet. That is the .css. But just for testing here to demonstrate, we'll go ahead and run through the process, and then later we'll create the style sheet. All right, so I'm going to create an H1, excuse me, I'm going to create a HTML tag. I'm going to apply my curly brackets. I'm going to say font, family, and let's see, I'm going to say to Homa, Verdania, Helvetica, and sans serif. We'll save it, come back over here and test it, and automatically all of the all of the fonts now are changed because I'm using the font family. It's affected all of the child fonts. So that is how your inheritance is working. Okay, so now let's do something different. Let's set for our H1s. Let's set a color of I think dark gray will work. I think that's a valid one. Okay, I don't think dark gray worked. Let's just do that. Yeah, there we go. All right, so I've set a style tag on my H1. I've set it to be a gray color. Let's set for our paragraph, let's set the color on it to be a steel gray. I think that's a valid one. No? What is that? Okay. Let's look it up. CSS color names. There it is. There is your valid list of colors and the RGB code equivalent. Let's make it dark. There was a steel gray that I remember before. Maybe it was slate. Oh, steel blue. Okay. So let's use a slate gray. Okay. There you go. That's actually kind of hard on the eyes, isn't it? So let's think of a different, let's just make this, there is, I want it to be black, but I don't like completely black. So let's do it this way. Let's set black. There we go. And how about that RGB code for that dark gray there? Okay. There you go. That's a little better. All right. So now I've got my layout sort of set. Um, let's break this up though, because it feels kind of too chunked together, right? So I'll just do this. There we go. Oh, it says translate. It's probably because of the. All right, so now we've got these textual elements up here. So what are some things we could do there with our style? Let's go up and take a look at it. We've got our A, and let's say we want the color of our A to stand out a little bit. So let's go to a little bit lighter gray, that 33333, and set the color to that. And then we have these cool little things you can do in CSS where you can say on, let's say, the hover, the color will be what? Let's make the hover color stand out. Let's make it all black. And then we have this other thing called clicked, I think. Or is it after? Um, yes. Ah, thank you. All right, I'll look that other one up in a second. All right, so we'll come over here. We'll test this. Yes. And you can see the hover now works. It shows up like a link. It does the normal thing. Um, let's let's see. Email me, call me. There we go. All right. So what we've done is just set some basic styles. You can see the inheritance that's in place. You can see how things are wrapping text and so forth. Um, and let's change the font now to maybe something different. So I'm going to take out Verdania and or Tahoma, just drop it down on the list a little bit. Come over here and refresh it. Still looks similar, but the font changed, right? And it applied it across the board because it's at the HTML level. All right, so let's do something different now. We've got our paragraph. Let's wrap this in a div, and we're going to apply class name. And let's see, we'll call this my container because that's really what it is, right? And we'll come up here, say dot my container. And we want to do something for the container that it's going to press this inheritance level down. So let's say padding on the left side of 10 pixels, padding on the right side of 15 pixels. Let's save it. Come back over here. You see it moved it over a little bit. It added the padding, right? Let's do some more. Let's put in here a new div down below, and we'll give it a class name that typically you want your class names to be something that makes sense. It speaks to what that area, that group of items is about, right? So I'm going to create a div, and this div is going to hold uh, some input items, right? So let's put a form tag, and we're going to say the method is a get. Don't worry about any of this yet. This is may not get it, but that was. I'm glad someone laughed. Okay. Um, let's see. We'll just do that. We'll type input type, and we'll make it text, and we'll say that this is a name attribute of student, student name. Okay. And let's give our div now something, a more meaningful name for this. This is going to be a student details. Okay, so I'm going to save that, come over here, refresh it, stop that. And all I have is this one little text box, right? Okay, so we're going to add a label. And we haven't really got into this yet, but there's also another purpose for the ID, and that's for the label. But I personally make it a habit. Anytime I have an ID field, I always put ID on them just for my own personal reasons, so I can look at it at first glance and know that it's an ID. Because otherwise, I can just assume that it's either a name attribute or a class name. Okay, so for the label, I'm going to say for, and I'm going to reference student ID because that's what the for attribute is for. And then I'm going to say student name. I'll save that. I'll refresh it. And now here's the other cool thing with label tags. If you put the for attribute on it and specify the ID of the input element, it will automatically select the input element for you. Okay. All right, so I have just some basic stuff here. So I've got a class name called student detail container. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say my student detail container, and I'm going to type in border. One px solid black. What do we think that'll do? Put a border around it that's 1 pixel wide. That is a solid black line right around the box. Right? All right, so probably need some other details in here. So I'm going to widen this out. I'm going to do padding. And is my student detail inside of anything that has padding? It is, right? So we can use the inherit. See if that works. No, it didn't. All right, so we're going to just say 10, 10, 10, 10. Anyone know why I specified 4 of these? If you look up here, this padding says padding left. This padding says padding right. Right? So I'm doing, by virtue of this definition, it's not going to tell us here, but there's a padding left, padding right, padding top, padding bottom, and each of these correspond to one of those pieces, and that's what it did. It put padding on all 4 sides now. Okay, so we got our student detail container, and we have our form, and so let's add another style, but this time I'm going to do something different. I'm going to say student detail container form. Now, why would I do that? Y'all give me, why would I specify like that? Any ideas? Light gray. I think light gray is an option. You guys, I'm afraid to answer. What I've done here is I've tied two selectors together. And I've said that when I come down through the document object model of the HTML, I come down through that tree of objects, I'm going to hit the student detail container, and it should have inside of that class, it should have a child that's a form, right? And so I've said now make that form this color. Well, let's mess with it a little bit. Let's do this. Let's put two forms. Well, let's call this form class crazy, and this one class sane. Now, dot sane is going to be light gray. Not that if you don't like, not that if you're not light gray, you're not sane, but you know, we'll make this one purple for crazy. So now I'm using inheritance. I'm specifying down the document object model, right? And so I can specify things contained within things and so forth. Okay. What are some other things we could do here? Does everyone follow this so far? Yeah? All right. So we've got this style up here. So let's take this style. We've worked on it. We decided, hey, we got it all in the same document, so we don't have to keep tabbing back and forth. Let's take our style. We're going to copy it. Go to File, Open. Where is my document at? Downloads, that's where it's at. Okay, losing my mind. Open. Downloads. Classwork site. And CSS. Going to open up my style in here. And I'm just going to do that. Paste that in there. I'm going to go up to the top. And this is a comment about my awesome styling abilities. Just kidding. Whatever you want it to be, though. Okay, so we got that. Now we need to come over here. We need to reference that style. I know some of you guys are still struggling with path statements a lot. So let's consider this, okay? This document, index.html, sits at the root of my folder called classwork. My CSS folder also sits at the root, but that folder has the style sheet in it. So use my reference icon. I'm going to say CSS slash, oh, you're not going to give it to me? Well, style.css, and I think that's good enough. All right, so it didn't pick it up. Sometimes when this happens, especially in Chrome, just come over here, look at your HTML. Okay. What are we missing? What do you guys think? Style is here. This is in CSS style. My index HTML is at the root, class site index HTML. I've got CSS slash style. What else do you think I'm missing? Any ideas? It's a good catch. Let's see if maybe I didn't save it. Okay. No. Let's see. What's that? Yeah. Okay. Well, let's just take a gander here. Maybe HTML style sheet link reference. Maybe we messed up something. Don't be afraid. If you feel like you're lost, go right in there and start Googling something and to take a look at it. All right. Rel style sheet. I bet that's what I'm missing. There you go. Okay. What else can we add into this to make it stand out? How about your forms down here? What do you think we can do to these to make them a little different? We might be able to apply a color. Maybe we want to do something like the border and say the border is none. What did that do to that border? It made it disappear, right? But we want to say that the border is 2 pixels. It is dashed, right? All right, so let's go a little bit further. What can we do to this border, to the input? Border none. See what happened to it? Takes away that kind of the inset look. You can also, I think, do outset. Inset is default. Right? There's a lot of different things you could do to style the types and the shapes of the borders. All right. What else do you guys want to do with it? Text box longer. So we've got our IDs, right? So let's go into our CSS and let's set a general statement about our inputs. Let's say length is 250 pixels. Oh, what do we have happen now? Told us it doesn't like that, right? Okay. So what could be conflicting with this? Why would it be doing that? Maybe we need to specify by attribute and say type equals text. No. Still told us we couldn't do that. So let's come over here and try it. Got to inspect it. The length. Has anyone caught why we can't use what we're doing wrong yet? There you go. All right, so width. All right, so here's a catch. Length, I believe, is actually an attribute on the input. I believe it's, yes. And what would you specify the length for on an input? I know this is way out of your chapter, but this is just kind of a goodie. Say you're creating a form and you're saying that I only want my user to type in so many characters. So what happens if I specify a length of 5 characters? If I come over here and I do that, is that the right one? I'm on the sane one, right? Okay. So if I do that, I type this is my, oh, I didn't do it. Did I not save it? Oh, I know why. Got to refresh it, right? Okay. So this is my, oh, it's proven me wrong. Okay. Uh, this is supposed to work. So we'll take that out for right now. But we said on our style, we wanted to set the width to 250 characters. What about the height? What do you think we should set the height to? 50? 15? Ooh, that made it very small, didn't it? How about 35? What do you think? That's very big. 40? Do I hear 50? 55? What's that? You really want to harass some people when they're like trying to like to input in their forms, right? You're like, let's see how bad we can make it for them to. Yeah, that's. Hi. Can you read this? Okay. So you can do a lot of things with your style sheets. One of the benefits of putting your style sheets external to your HTML is you make the style sheet something that can be used across all of your pages. So you don't have to keep typing the same style over and over and over again. You can organize your site to have the same size images, the same size text, the same functionality, like when you hover over over your buttons, right? Over your links. When you guys were looking at your ugliest pages, what was the one thing that stood out to you about some of those pages? What's that? Very crowded. Yeah. How important is that even on this page? If you come to this site right now and you look at this, it's just text, right? I'm not a web designer, or I guess I should say a graphic designer. Okay. Most graphic arts designers will tell you that in layout and print that you want to keep the amount of text the person has to read as soon as they open the page to a minimum and make it uh, very specified text that you're that sends the message of what you're trying to put out on your page. So you want to make sure you have appropriate labels, the types of images, and even the images themselves, they should correspond in some way to the color scheme that you have going on your site. All right. So let's look at our assignment for the week. You guys feeling confident? Is there any challenges that you've seen so far that maybe you would like help with? You guys got this? Like 100%? Yeah. Winnie, you said you spent 4 hours on something yesterday. What was it the thing that tricked you up? Ah, oh, okay. Referencing the. Hmm, okay. Yeah. Let's see here. All right. I'm going to pull up the homework assignment. We have about half an hour here, and we'll try to work through it a little bit. Does that sound good? Okay. Unless you guys have something very specific you want to focus on that tripped you up. Okay. Talk about ugly design. Okay. I'm surprised some of you didn't put this down as your site design. That was. All right. So we have the color at the top. Before we do that, let me just show you guys something. There's a thing, um, web design colors. Sometimes this is helpful for some of you guys who are um, are thinking about how you want to design your site. You know that red and green are opposite of each other in the color wheel, and so they contrast well together. That's why Christmas is so inviting, right? Because it's the red and the green. But there are other opposites or other comparison colors. They call them, I think, like the tri color scheme or the quad color scheme. And they're choosing colors on different areas of the color palette. Um, let's just take a look here real quick. Okay, this is just an article talking about it. But they do have, there you go. They have what's called a triadic color scheme. And so you choose colors that match within those color frameworks. They're complementary. Um, I don't think I would ever paint my house yellow, blue, and purple, orange, whatever. But there's also um, different color schemes that you can use for your sites. Um, I think this is a sample. Let me open this up. This is what I was really looking for, was there are websites that will actually generate the color schemes for you, which is valuable because you can use that in your CSS, the RGBs, the and so forth. So you can use a monochromatic, triad, complementary, compound, shades, or you can develop your custom. And what this does is it basically gives you the set of colors that you can then use um, for your site. This one here, Adobe Color, also has a way where you could drop an image in, something that maybe is really about you, a picture, a theme, and it can extract the important colors from that as well. This is called color.adobe.com, and this can be helpful when you're designing your own sites to be able to have something to design your color schemes, so you don't end up with the Yale Art Institute colors. That was interesting. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to the assignment. I just wanted to show you that because my wife really loves colors, and she's very good at picking out complementary colors, and she sometimes wants to dress me. Um, um, so I try to keep it basic, just light blues. Anyways, so the heading element, this size is to be increased 200%. Apply H2 in a white color. All right, so let's open it up and take a look. So they did not supply the HTML for this, did they? Okay, so you had to create the layout from scratch, right? Okay, which is pretty basic. You should be able to do this pretty well. All right, so, oops, over here we'll create, close these out. File, new file. All right. So homework 6, right? Yeah. Okay, so this is our index.html. Type. Anyone like using Atom for your development? Yeah, I like the plugin they have in here is called Emmet, which is nice because you can type in the first couple of letters of the tag and then it will spit out the rest for you. So for example, I do that and look at that, what it did for me. Isn't that awesome? All right, so we have an H1 tag. And what does our H1 tag need? It needs CSS222 web design and programming. Okay, CS222 web design and programming. And then we have, I think that's an H2. Is that what that is? Yeah. Homework number 6, CSS building blocks. And then number 3, use the color of RGB and HSLA text should be yellow and others are white. Okay. So we'll just add a paragraph tag. Is there not a text folder to paste some of this in, or do you have to type it out? Wow, that's fun. Okay. The following paragraph display. Someone read that to me off your. Anyone have it open? The following paragraph displays the transparency levels. Transparency levels. I'm sorry. All within the parenthesis. 0, 20, 80, 60, and 100. They all have percent behind it? Okay. Okay. Is that it? I think it's code, right? RGBA. Okay. Let's take what we have and open it and just take a gander at it now. All right, so there we have that. And space in there. All right. So we need the top in red, the middle in white, and we have to have the background. Okay. So we create a new folder, CSS. New file, style CSS. Whoops. Rename. All right. So we have our HTML tag. We have our H1 tag. We have our H2 tag. We have our code tag. Make the color on this one yellow. Come back into our HTML. Link. Style. Type. Did I not save? Save. Save. Yeah. Okay. So let's go to our document here. They're using some type of Tahoma text, I'm assuming. So we'll set that first. Font family. Let's just do sans serif. I am showing my mistakes here. All right. Tahoma, Verdania, Arial, Helvetica. All right. All right, what am I missing? Oh, missing something else. What are we missing? Style CSS. We're in the CSS folder. Index. Ah, there we go. Path will get you every time. Did you see that? All right. And there's that yellow now. Okay. What else do we need? We want the background, right? So we have a background image. URL. And we're going to reference the image. What is the name of that image? You like that, huh? All right, so they wanted H1 to be what color? Red? H2 color white? And we wanted everything else to be white, I'm assuming, right? Just the paragraph tags maybe, right? So let's not do that. Let's do this. All right. You guys catching the hang of it so far? You're like, yeah, you're doing our homework for us. I'll just make sure I cut out this part of the video. Okay, we have about 10 minutes left here. Let's look at the transparency ones. So they got, these all look like paragraphs, right? So that's number 4. Number 4 says, use the RGBA style. Okay, style rule to display each text with a different transparency level. Okay. Okay. Zero, 20, 40, 60, right? Is that what it says? Okay. doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me, but all right. 20, 40, 60. Transparency 0%. Okay. So now becomes the fun. All right. Winnie, what did you put? Did you use a class? I can't see it from there, but can you blow it up bigger? I need better glasses. Okay. So we did color. Can you read out your color for me? What RGB you said? Okay. Hang on here. I'm going to 20, 40, 60. Okay. Uh-huh. Okay. 0, point. Okay. And this one is 0.2. Okay. Okay. There you go. All right, guys. I think we're at a good stopping point. I'll take the video tonight and I'll upload it, and of course the slides. And I think you guys shouldn't have any problems with the assignment, right? You guys should be pretty straightforward with it. Okay. Any questions before we close the class today? Okay. Uh, there are two individuals in here that has not submitted their homework yet from a couple weeks ago, and I just want to let you know. Come speak to me. We could work it out. I won't give you full credit, but you don't want to go with zeros because that'll hurt your overall grade. Okay. So every opportunity to get you a good grade in this class. All right. All right. I will see you Tuesday online. I should have commented with everyone's discussion questions so far, discussion forums. If you have any questions, I'll be here in class for another 10 minutes. You can talk to me offline.